Hi, it's Dennis Daly. This time around, a rather heavy topic, bereavement after the loss of a loved one. Henya Kagan Klein is a sociologist who has written several books on the topic. She says it's tough when you lose someone, particularly when a parent loses a child.
Parents don't stop grieving. Now, I'm not talking about the particular expressions. You see, some parents cry, some parents don't cry, or they will cry occasionally, they will cry later in time, and so forth. But there are no timetables. There are no timetables. Parents do not detach themselves from the deceased child. A parent doesn't stop being a parent. You see, when my husband died, I'm not a spouse anymore. But Gilly was killed, and I am Gilly's mother. I'm still Gilly's mother. And for the rest of my life, I'm Gilly's mother. You see? So parents do not detach themselves from the deceased child, although the intensity varies. The relationships change in time. As our perception of ourselves as mourners change, our perception of the relationship with the child changes, and the perception of the child itself changes. For instance, I don't have any visual image of Gilly today. Had she lived today, she would have been 20 years old. Gilly was killed when she was 11 years old. That's the only visual image I have of Gilly, the only image, the only memory I have of Gilly. But I cannot avoid thinking in terms of what if type of thing. So this is another characteristic of parental bereavement. We really develop a dual image of the child. We have side by side with the concrete image of the child, we have also a shadow image that evolves of the child, which is characterized by the what if type thinking. I call it the shadow image. Okay. You see, if I see a girl that I assume is around this age, 20 years, 19, 20, I can imagine, I can actually put Gilly's image, on that girl, and try to imagine what Gilly would have looked like, what she would behave, where she would have gone, what she would have done with her life, and also imagine in that process how I would have interacted then with Gilly.
There's a wonderful country song. I don't know whether it's He Would Be 16 or He Would Be 19. I can't remember, but it's a sad song about a young girl who had to give up her child after it was born. And now she's thinking the child would be 19 or 16, and every time she sees a 19-year-old boy playing basketball or whatever, I'm going to cry. Yeah. She pictures that as, I wonder what if. So that's a very natural kind of thing.
That's it. So you see, this is also another characteristic of parents' bereavement. So I said there is no timetable and so forth. Also, another characteristic of parental bereavement is that I said it's lifelong with varying intensity, but what characterizes it is not stages. We don't go through distinct stages or phases of bereavement as some professionals as well as non-professionals tend to think. We really go through a process of readjustment, a lifelong process of readjustment, relearning to live without the child. And what characterizes this process of readjustment, are steps, inward steps and outward steps that we take simultaneously.
Go ahead. What was it? How tough was it to write this book?
Each of us had different ways of expressing ourselves, including devastation. My characteristic way, one of my characteristic ways, is writing. This comes natural to me. So I started being a behavioral scientist. I started documenting what I'm going through, recording what I'm going through. And I have done this most of my life about events such as dreams or other events. So this comes natural to me. I started recording. Also, I have noticed that although as I said before, I have been a psychologist for about 25 years, I nevertheless, when I was hit, I was not prepared. Well, none of us is prepared for the death of our child or our children, but nevertheless, I was completely taken by surprise by what I felt, by the devastation. And I knew, from the sort of relationship I had with Gilly, the type of attachment I always felt that had anything happened to Gilly or to my son, who is 9 years older than Gilly, I would just drop dead. And then when I started observing, you see, the observer in me started observing what is going on with me, I said, well, it really doesn't fit for what I have learned, what I have preached, what I have practiced for so many years.
When a person suffers a loss, particularly I'm thinking maybe a woman whose husband dies unexpectedly, should that person expect to feel anger? I mean, I've so often heard, quite often, that people say, that person abandoned me, why did he have to die? And then they have guilt feelings that they feel bad about someone who, it would seem that the wave of emotions that comes through a person is an incredibly complex thing.
Yes, it is. You're talking about anger, you're talking about guilt. What I'm saying is we feel many emotions at once. Many emotions, among them anger, among them resentment, among them shame. Many emotions. Yes, you may feel abandoned, but not necessarily. So it's not something you have to expect. What you have to expect is that you will feel many emotions at once. Many times at once, although a certain emotion can be overwhelming at a time. But you don't have to be angry. You don't have to feel anger, so it's not necessarily.
So obviously bereavement is not a one-size-fits-all
No,
situation.
it's not.
It's incredibly personal.
Absolutely. Depending on your personality, your life experience, your relationship with the deceased, on so many factors, your upbringing, your belief system. It's an endless number of factors.
You've touched on it in several ways, but I want to ask the question this way. How has the loss of your daughter helped you in helping others who are going through that same thing?
Well, Gilly's death, I call it death. It's really, I'm struggling with the concept of loss. What loss? I didn't lose her, she was killed. Gilly's death, when I realized that I survived Gilly's death, and when I started recording my experiences, and when these experiences formulated themselves, so to speak, into a model, into a new conceptualization of parental bereavement, and this is what my book is all about. It's really a breakthrough model that explains and describes parental bereavement as a unique form of grief. I realized that my survival turned into living. You see, I was always a mission-driven person, but now my mission had a focus. And I have turned my career entirely to work only with bereaved people. And I hope that my vision, this new vision, will help not only bereaved parents to understand what they are going through better, but also professionals and other people who care for bereaved parents to understand parental bereavement better.
This week on American Montage, we're talking to Henya Kagan Klein, who suffered the loss of her daughter and realized that all the things she had been telling people as a psychologist about grief were wrong when she suddenly stepped into that arena. On this week's American Montage. Why not drop us a line here at American Montage? The address is simple. Post Office Box 26223, Los Angeles. 26223, Los Angeles, 90026. I'll give it again in a moment. In the meantime, if you have a computer and you're online and you'd like to visit the UPI website, that address is even simpler, www.upi.com. The mailing address again, Box 26223, Los Angeles, 90026. My guest this week on American Montage is Henya Kagan Klein. She is a counseling psychologist. She has come to Los Angeles from Houston to talk about her new book on bereavement, and we have been talking about a variety of things, including the loss of her own daughter and how that changed her perspective on grieving. How has this book been received? What has been the reaction to it so far?
I catch myself really, and I think, God, it really validates my existence. I talk a lot. I travel all over the country and I give seminars and workshops and so forth, and I present my model and of course talk as a bereaved mother who happens to be a psychologist, not the other way around. And the reactions are, that's exactly what I thought. From bereaved parents, the one common reaction that I get, and I get many, is, thank you. I thought that I'm going insane. People had told me, this includes professionals as well, non-professionals, that something is wrong with me. They either pushed medication or they said that something is wrong with me because I don't go on with my life, because I don't say goodbye and so forth. You are giving me permission to grieve my own way, and I know it's normal. I know it's normal.
Do parents, I'm trying to say this gently, some deaths are unexpected, some aren't. The parent who has a dying child, for example, maybe over a long period of time, is that parent any more able to prepare for death when it comes than if it's unexpected?
Common sense will say yes. Experience says no. A parent is never truly prepared for the death of their child. There's always this wishful thinking and that hope that a miracle will happen and their child will survive. So any death of a child is devastating for the parent. And yes, we are talking about anticipatory grief and so forth. It may lessen somewhat the intensity, but it's devastating nevertheless.
You know, you are saying something here that I think is wonderfully enlightening for those of us who've never had children. And that's the very simple thought that whether the child is alive or not, it's still your child. And I had never, I thank you for bringing that up. I had never really thought of that way before. Because I know my mother, who is really not cogent any longer, but she and I had a long talk about 10 years ago with one of her sisters about the fact that their mother had lost 6 children before the age of 3. Several died in childbirth. The oldest survived and choked on a peanut husk when she was 3 years old. But I suddenly realized from their conversation how their mother still held those children to her.
Of course.
Even though one of them lived an hour.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess if you've never been a mother, you don't understand.
Or never been a parent.
Yeah.
It's harder to understand. Cognitively you may be able to understand it, but you have to be there. To fully understand it emotionally. I've been asked many times, during the seminars and so forth, what about, is there a difference in bereavement between a mother who had a miscarriage and a mother whose child had died when he or she was 30, for instance? And I said, well, does she grieve less? The one who actually didn't see her child yet, or didn't meet her child, does she grieve less than the other mother? Well, ask the mother who had the miscarriage. Does she? I say no, because we are creatures that have assumed worlds assumed. We have fantasies about the children. We have dreams about the children, and these are very powerful.
I don't want to get into this except to pass by here, but you hear some of that brought up in the abortion debate.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would think very much so.
Yeah.
I want to ask one question about your daughter's death, and we'll move on. Do you remember much of the circumstances of the funeral and the time after?
Yes.
You do. That's clear to you.
Very,
some people don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Some don't. So again, it depends on
individual.
It's individual. Depends on your training. It depends on what you're motivated to remember. By the way, one of the characteristics of parental bereavement is many parents complain that they, or others complain about them, that they become forgetful and so forth. They don't pay attention. What has changed is not the type of my memory. What has changed is it became relevant to my life and what I consider not relevant anymore.
Doctor, what about a type of faith, whether it's religion or just a strong will? Do you get at all into the importance of getting through all of this if you're grounded in religion or ethics?
Yes and no. It depends on the individual. Some individuals, and I have worked and have met individuals that are very religious, regardless of the type of religion that they hold on, and they don't feel helped by their religion, by their religious beliefs, and others who don't, who are not religious, consider themselves even atheists, and they work through. It's never over. You see, for a parent, it's never over, but they work through. And others like myself, who didn't have any organized religion, and developed a new worldview, which includes religious beliefs.
Are some people obsessive in hanging on to the memory? Is there a point at which a surviving parent can dwell on the now gone child too much? Do you see that?
I know that there are professionals, especially those that hold on, and they don't have to be physicians or psychiatrists, but other professionals also that hold on and believe in the medical way of thinking, and they tend to, what I call, pathologize bereavement. So if I am saying that a parent does not detach himself or herself from the child, that means it's expected that a parent will continue having a relationship with the child. Well, somebody else who holds on to the medical way of thinking will say, well, this is a pathological reaction, so let me call it then obsession, let me call it preoccupation, let me call it then complicated reaction to grief, a complicated grief reaction. Well, I'm saying, well, we have to be very careful here. Very careful, because what I'm saying is what underlies, for instance, the constellation of emotions that underlies parental bereavement is deep sadness. It's a term that I coined, and not depression. If the parent was not depressed prior to the death of the child, the parent doesn't become depressed or psychotic or develops an anxiety disorder within a split second after the death of the child. It doesn't mean the parent cannot develop a disorder later. You see?
Sure.
So what I want to caution is about the attempt to pathologize bereavement. Mm-hmm. Remember, it was parental bereavement. The event, the death of the child, is the abnormal event. This is abnormal. The parent's reactions of bereavement are normal. A normal parent has normal reactions.
I find myself here almost being ashamed that I've asked you simplistic questions. But the things I asked that are based on misconception, are these fairly common misconceptions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I just
and by
want to feel a little better
well.
about what I've asked.
And by professionals as well.
Let's end this by just asking for some advice here. You, as an educated woman who did deal with people's problems prior to your daughter's death, and then realize that now you have a clearer focus for helping other people. What does it feel like for you to now be able, through, it was a tragedy certainly, but to be able to deal with other people's losses, because by God, you know what it feels like. I mean, you must feel a great sense of achievement that you're sharing this with people.
Achievement, I wouldn't call it achievement. What I feel...
It's got to be positive.
Yeah, but what I feel is I am driven by a sense of mission. I have to educate. Life is short. I have a sense of urgency. You see, before Gili was killed, I had the illusion that there is a future, there is time. Now I have a sense of urgency, and because I have the sense of urgency, I have to educate now. I have to get the word out, both to bereaved parents, and by this hopefully lessen some of the pain that parents feel, and both of professionals to educate professionals so they will not cause damage to bereaved parents. Maybe damage is a strong word, but sometimes it happens. So I feel, and forgive me for using a spiritual conceptualization, but what I feel is that what you call achievement, for me, it's a turning point. It was a turning point in my process of readjustment when I was able to transcend my pain, my individual pain, and give back to this world that had betrayed me. this world that hurt me so badly. This is my sense.
Doctor, I want to thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
You are a very strong-willed woman who has gone through a lot, but yet suddenly realized that you have a story to tell and a way to help others. And I thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Some thoughts on bereavement from Henya Kagan Klein. I'm Dennis Davis.